This episode of the To Die For Daily podcast is brought to you by our all-new web store at todiefordaily.com. Kiss a Prince lip balm, Sunnies. I know you're going to love it.
The relationship between Diana and the media was always interesting. And I remember there was a royal tour of Zimbabwe, and on the first evening, she held this amazing drinks reception for the media, and we were all looking forward to this. But in the afternoon, we were out filming. I was actually with her sister, and we were just chatting about tours like this. And I'd said there was a time where we wouldn't be following Diana around the world because it was a huge expensive thing to do, and there would eventually be a loss of interest. Oh my word, how wrong was I? But anyway, I'm in this reception that evening, and I'm at the end of the garden with a couple of friends, including Richard Kay from the Daily Mail, and we were just having a drink, and she arrived, and we were all trying to keep out of it because she had dignitaries to meet and everything. And someone said, she seems to be coming straight this way. And sure enough, and it's the most amazing image because it was a beautiful evening, gin blue sky, and she's walking down this fabulous lawn straight towards us. And she just came up to us and she said, "Simon, can I have a word?" And pulled me aside and said, I hear you may not be covering all these tours for much longer. And I said, I said something that I will forever. I said there's a limit to the number of babies you can go around hugging before we lose interest. I mean, how wrong was I? But she said, but why is it so expensive? And we then spent a long time, as I explained, for television at the time, the cost of booking a satellite, sending pictures back by satellite, all the paraphernalia that makes television a very complicated medium, much easier to phone a story through to a newspaper. But she had no concept of the cost of that. And she was fascinated. And she just said, well, what can I do to help? And I said, well, there isn't much.
Love the British monarchy? You've come to the right place. Welcome to the To Die For Daily podcast with Kinsey Schofield. Take it away, Kinsey.
Hi guys, Kinsey Schofield here, and I am with actually one of my favorite TV personalities over in the UK, Simon McCoy. You have an incredible resume, but you know what surprised me, and we're going to test the Wikipedia, the Wikipedia authenticity here. I didn't realize you were actually a royal correspondent for like 6 years. Is that true?
It is true. There was a new network in 1989 here in the UK called Sky Television, and I was their first royal correspondent because I'd had some dealings with Buckingham Palace at my previous place of work. And when they heard that, they said, right, it's you. And at the time, that was a great gig because all it really involved was traveling the world with the Queen and seeing some fabulous places and not too much pressure. And then within sort of 6 months of me taking on this job in 1990, all hell broke loose, and suddenly the royals were front page news and top of every bulletin 7 days a week throughout the next 2-3 years. So it wasn't the quiet job I was expecting.
That's what I was thinking, because when I was looking at the dates, I thought, wow, this is, I think, when Windsor caught on fire.
1992. It was the Charles and Diana's marriage broke up. For Andrew and Sarah's marriage broke up. It was what the Queen described as her annus horribilis just after the fire, and it was relentless. It was utterly relentless, and all of us following the royals, I think, and the royals themselves, I think we were all exhausted through that whole period.
And then I think that, were you put on the desk as a reporter like a year later after you checked out of royal corresponding?
I was doing I started presenting at the same sort of time. So I stayed as royal correspondent. I was doing sort of fill-in presenting. And then it was actually in just the start of the end of 95, beginning of 96 that I became a full-time presenter, but I was still sort of doing the odd royal thing. I had ceased to be the royal correspondent when we all got that news from Paris. But because obviously I'd followed Diana for years around the world, I was instantly involved.
Right. I was going to ask you, but now it feels like an obvious yes. As a royal correspondent, you did actually see Diana in real life, correct? She was near you.
Oh my word, yes. I mean, we used to travel the world with her, and what she was very clever. Whenever you went, and there was a group, but they used to call it the Royal Rat Pack. They used to be the same people who followed around the world. You could be in any airport in the world, and you'd see people who you'd been sitting next to the day before in London. And she got to know us, and she wasn't the only royal to do this, but at the beginning of a royal tour, she would always hold a drinks reception and meet us all and talk to us. And that was a smart move. You saw these reporters who used to spend their entire careers having a go at her and being rude to her, turn to jelly in front of her. She'd walk into a room and you could just see these quivering, and it was mostly men at the time, just standing there with looking completely at a loss, because secretly everybody was in love with her, I think. But it was a smart move on her part, and it was her moment to talk to us utterly informally, and it was very interesting, I think, for both sides to see how it all worked out.
Because you didn't pursue that role, do you think that you kind of weren't starstruck by them because it just, this was a job to you?
No, I think you're always starstruck. I mean, what she had, and I've known two other people who've got this capability. You can be in a room of 200 people, the biggest room in the world, and you will immediately know someone has just walked in the room. You won't be able to see it, but people's reaction to that one person, Diana had it, Nelson Mandela had it, and Bill Clinton had it. Those are the three people I think you were immediately aware, oh my word, something rather special has just happened. You never lose that. And actually, as a journalist, if you lose interest in people like that, you're in the wrong job, I think.
Oh, wow. I love that. All right. So take me to, because we're coming up on the anniversary of her death. Are you do you jump out of bed because your phone goes off? How does this happen? How do you find out that this is going on?
Well, to my eternal shame, I slept through about 8 phone calls. It was a Sunday morning, and if you were out for a Saturday evening, Sunday mornings was the moment you weren't expecting anything to happen. When eventually I was woken up, I had to go straight into the studio. I did a quick interview in the studio, and then I spent 8 hours in an edit suite to produce a 1-hour program that went out that night, just looking at her life. And what we did in the space of 8 hours took the BBC, I think, 10 days to do. But the beauty of it was, when you're a royal correspondent, you can see pictures of her, where it was, what everybody was doing. So it's much easier to sit in an edit suite and tell a story when you know exactly what you're talking about and who you're talking about. And she didn't give many speeches, but I knew everyone pretty well. So we were able to put a program together quite fast. And that I suspect was one of the most memorable days of my life, because I was sitting in an edit suite, just desperate to know what on earth was going on in the outside world. But instead of which, I was just thinking about Diana, her life, and my experience with that.
Did it feel like this can't be true when it happened? Did it just feel like this can't be happening?
I think for a lot of us, certainly it didn't hit me. It didn't hit me until I was sitting outside Westminster Abbey on the day of the funeral. And you know what? It hit me when I saw the coffin in front of me and I saw the flowers which just said Mum on them. And I saw William and Harry walking behind. And I started crying. And I suddenly realized that for a week, we'd had a whole week of the biggest story most of us will ever cover in our lifetimes. We were working every hour God sends. And for the first time, it was a moment where you sort of took stock, and it wasn't until the funeral, I think, it really hit a lot of us. So none of us wanted it to be true. History is a wonderful thing and gets rewritten a lot. I mean, a lot of people forget that at the time, she was in a phase of not being the most popular person in the world, certainly in the UK, because she'd given up on her charity work. She started a relationship with someone everybody thought, in the media at least, was unsuitable. So she was sort of battling against the system and was getting quite a rough time in the press. And I think people forget that at the time. We all have this saintly view of her, and at the time it wasn't like that.
That's what I was thinking, and I wonder, did people dislike Dodi because he was because I read a lot that it was about race, but I mean, this guy had a fiance when he met her. He was, somebody like was wearing a ring on their finger, and he was just this playboy, and apparently, I've read he also did drugs. I mean, this just wasn't maybe not the best boyfriend for somebody that we do think of as so saintly.
Yeah, Kinsey, or every time a member of the royal family has a relationship with anybody non-white, everything's about race, and we're seeing that at the moment. It wasn't about race. It was actually about his father more than anything else. Dodi's father, Mohammed Al Fayed, who used to own Harrods, which is the big department store in London, was a very controversial figure who was not liked because he wasn't part of the UK establishment, and he was the way he made his money was controversial, to say the least. And they were flashy with their money. He was always flashy with his money. And so when his son started going out with Diana, Princess of Wales, he made the most of it. And he when she died, he built this ridiculous shrine to her and Dodi and their love in the staircase of Harrods. It was, I don't know, I suppose the words good and taste didn't come in the same sentence very often when you were talking about the Al Fayeds.
That's a very good example of not the tacky, I guess, is the word I was thinking.
You see that's the one word, isn't it? I think
you were
tacky,
much nicer about it.
Tacky, but he, they were influential. You didn't ignore Mohammed Al Fayed, and he, as I say, in the business world here in the UK, he was a big name. So you had that often uncomfortable, and look at what's going on now. That relationship between the royal family and money is a difficult one, and I think part of the draw of Dodi Al Fayed to Diana was here was a guy who had a yacht, who could give her the life that very few other than royals could give her. So it worked for them. And we'll never know exactly what was going on with that relationship. I mean, lots of rumors about where it was headed, but she certainly knew that it wasn't the most approved of relationship in this country, and that may have been the spur to her, because that there was a bit of that nature in her of kicking the system. That's an understatement given what she'd done to it, but yeah.
I do love that about her. That is one of my favorite, I think that's what draws me to her, is her rebellious spirit. But I also have always felt like Dodi was just her way of trying to hurt Dr. Khan, and she felt like he would inevitably come back or pursue her because out of jealousy, which is, I think what was happening towards the end. I've read somewhere that he was trying to call her the night she died to tell her to come home. And if that's true, how heartbreaking.
Kinsey, we will never, ever really know what went on with Diana and her private life. It was she was certainly sad. A lot of people say she was treated very badly by Prince Charles. I think there's an element of that, but as I say, his history is much kinder to her than it is to him. But she was a lost soul. She had her two boys and felt she was losing touch with them because they were going down the royal path, and the establishment, if you like, was saying, particularly for William, he's going to be future king. So his life was split between father and mother on that basis, and she was just trying to find a role for herself. And here in Dodi Al Fayed, she had someone who could give her that life and give her that sense of escape. I mean, I remember talking to her about she complained bitterly that she could never just get away and be herself on her own. I was never sure about that, because many of us were pretty sure she was the one ringing the photographers to tell them where she was going to be most of the time. Yeah. And if you want to get away on a holiday and not be seen, there are places you can go. And I talked to her about it. So, while she hated the attention, she also craved it. And this was part of the complication of Diana. If she'd been out of the public eye, I think she'd have been much, much more unhappy than she was in it. However unhappy she said she was with that.
Right. Yeah, no, that's one of the things that I admired about her too, that she I know, and it's a little naughty, but that when she was unhappy with the narrative or when she was unhappy with the story being told, instead of sitting back, never complaining, never explaining, and she'd go over to Richard Kay, or Andrew Morton would somehow have a stack of tapes in his mailbox. Something about that is really charming to me, but I think it's because she was the first. Now when I see things like that happen, I'm like, I don't respect that. We need to leave the royal family alone. But at the time, I was like, oh, this is so interesting. I was also, a child, so I don't know how much that had to do with it. But that is one thing that I really liked about her, that she found a way to get out of something that made her unhappy. But that panorama interview, I know that it bit her in the butt, but we got to learn a lot about her from that. One of my favorite quotes was, "I'm a free spirit." I think it was something like, "I'm a free spirit," and a lot of people don't like that, but I really think that defines her. Like you said, we do think of her as almost a martyr today, but it does seem like Prince William acknowledges that she had troubles more so than Prince Harry. Is that
Well,
just because?
he was much more aware of it at the
Yeah,
time because
yeah.
he was the shoulder that she was crying on, and he was protecting her, and I think to some degree also probably protecting Harry from what was going on. But I think William, and the thing is, anybody who's in a family which has been through a divorce or a breakup like that knows that no one else knows what's going on really other than those who are principally involved in it, but also just the impact it has on those around them. And the bottom line is, you want your parents to be happy. You don't want to see your mother coming home in tears and floods of tears, and you will do your best. And I think William grew up very, very fast because he was the man at the time, and he was a very young man, but he was the person that she was relying on to sort of see him through. And that's why you see in him now a very, I mean, old, but old beyond his years, I think is probably a fair way of putting it. But someone who at his heart has kindness, which he inherited from his mother, certainly, and who probably understands much more about that sort of pressure than perhaps Harry, and that might explain a bit about why Harry is where he is.
No, I'd never thought about him protecting Harry too, but you're exactly right that he probably was trying to protect his brother from content that might hurt his heart. Yeah. What do you think Princess Diana's legacy will be? I mean, I feel like we still talk about her like she's here.
That's that's a tough question, isn't it? What is her legacy? I think she probably saved the monarchy in the long run because she modernized it in a way. Suddenly, people were really interested, and in this country in particular, also in America, she did rejuvenate interest in the monarchy. That was a double-edged sword because it was also what threatened it hugely. But she gave it a human side that without which I don't think we would be as fond of them as we are. I mean, regardless of the problems that they're having now and will have when the Queen dies, yeah. I think our attitude to monarchy has been absolutely strengthened by Diana. There are those old fuddy-duddies in this country who regard her as trying to bring it down. We're hearing the same arguments about what's going on with Harry and Meghan. With Diana, that interview, going on television and expressing what she expressed, that was so damaging to the institution of monarchy, and yet the British public loved her for it and understood her, or at least thought they did. So I think there's that side of things. The other side of things is she did tremendous things for a lot of charities, and they are benefiting to this day as a result of that. So that certainly would be her legacy. But her most important legacy, of course, is the two boys, who are who they are because of her.
Okay, I know I told you I was only going to keep you 20 minutes. I have one more question.
You can keep me as long as you like.
Thank you. I feel like there was a brief break when it came to paparazzi and the media. It felt like they acknowledged that something went wrong when she died. Obviously, I think specifically I've heard Prince Harry, he really punches that it was paparazzi that ended her life. When we know that there were so many other elements, a driver that perhaps had alcohol in his system, not wearing the seatbelt, speed, there were multiple issues there. What do you think the media's relationship is with the monarchy now? Do they still think about her death, and do they still respond to Prince William and his family in a way that is respectful and thoughtful based on Diana's death?
There's a fundamental thing that you have to understand about the relationship between media and the monarchy. And we keep talking about the paparazzi, and they are a different thing altogether. So the media, the likes of me, and I at times was pretty ashamed to be standing with a cameraman waiting for Diana to come out of a gym, for example. It's not a job for a grown-up particularly. But there was huge public interest, and that was our justification for doing it. She knew who we were never a threat. The paparazzi, some of them are people, well, I mean, I can't use the words I would want to use. They were unpleasant people. They were driven by money. A picture of Diana doing anything made money, so they did anything to get it. I many times did stories about the lengths to which they go. There was a video of Diana just standing by a car in tears because they acted like a pack of wolves. They would surround her and just how many pictures of one person do you want? But all the time, the sound of clicks and the flashes and the paparazzi. Yeah, I mean, they do hold responsibility for that sense of being hounded that she had. I mean, going back to the funeral, on the day of the funeral, we were the paparazzi, the photographers who were accredited, i.e. the palace had a job to do, and they played by the rules. We were all actually in the same area. We were all standing there, and in front of us were the public. And I remember vividly, just before the coffin appeared, the public turned round to the media and were all shouting, "This is your fault." And they were pointing at the photographers, "You're responsible for this." And it was difficult not to say, yeah, we all, and the public too had a responsibility, because without the public interest, the paparazzi wouldn't have been doing what they were doing. So that changed fundamentally how the press, the relationship between the press and the monarchy, and it makes me sad. I think to see that Harry is so against the media, because it has certainly changed since the days of Diana, and there is a respect there. But the problem is, and what Harry and Meghan need to understand, that hypocrisy of complaining about the media and yet using it to your own ends is something the public have cottoned on to. And they don't like it. So you can't one day bitch about it and then the next day be saying, I've signed a great deal with the media company with my story. It doesn't work. And I think that's at the heart of what the problem is at the moment. But in terms of the relationship, a King Charles will have a different relationship with the media than the Queen has. The Queen, who can do no wrong, whose mantra was always never complain and never explain. And it has worked for her, which is why all of us, if we were asked who's the one person in the world you would want to interview, it would be her, because none of us has ever known what she thought about anything. Yeah. And that's utterly remarkable. So Charles and Diana have changed all that, because we knew more about their marriage than I often know about my own. So it changed that relationship between the public and the monarchy fundamentally. And I actually look at William, and I think he's the one who will probably change it in a way that's more sympathetic to the monarchy, because he gets it. William absolutely gets it. When his children were born, the media were handled with respect, but they were sort of kept away. But they stayed away because they understood and respected William. It's all about respect in the end. And that's what has been lost with other members of the royal family at the moment.
Well, Simon, I love talking to you. I could talk to you forever about this. I could talk to you forever about anything because, we talk about Britney Spears sometimes. So
Indeed.
that's the definition of friendship right there.
Really? Okay. I'll stick to talking about the Royals, and we'll stay friends on that basis.
I just meant the ability to talk about anything, Simon. Okay. But
Kinsey,
no,
you could talk without anybody there for a good few hours. So it's you. We all love to talk to you. So thank you very much, because you see, you know more about Diana than most people who were around at the time. So it's important to get a perspective of her and what she was about. Very few people met her, obviously,
yeah.
but understood that at the heart of her was an unhappy woman who just wanted a husband who loved her, and with lots of us have been there. That fairy tales don't often happen.
Now, that breaks my heart. But yeah, I would say one of the reasons when people ask me, why do you love Diana? I said, there's just a weird, I relate to loving somebody that doesn't love you back. And you look at Prince Charles and you're like, what are you doing? This is the most beautiful woman in the world. So that's exactly right. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I'm going to turn off this recording, and then I'm going to tell you that I love you without people watching us. So I'm going to
Okay. I'll look forward to that.
Thank you for listening to the To Die For Daily Podcast with Kinsey Schofield. A transcript of this chat is available at todiefordaily.com. Please subscribe to hear more from your favorite royal commentators. Cheers.